Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm going to try to make this a little bigger. How does that look for everyone? I figured it would only take a few years for us to get much bigger print, so I hope that worked out for everyone.
Very good.
Okay, so I want to start off where we are now versus where we were from the first meeting. So what I'm going to do is we'll start off just like the way we did last time. We'll start off with what we show as the difference. We'll talk about some of the numbers on the income side. We'll go through any questions anyone may have. Then we'll go through the expenses and start from the top and work our way down. Okay, so we'll start off with, as of right now, with all the changes that were made after the first meeting, right now we have a $2.14 increase per unit per month. As you go down through the general, ambulance, cable, irrigation, security, transportation, and the reserves number, they now match everything that's on the expense side. Is there any question about the association fees as of right now? Yes, sir.
In the income section, you have advertising, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't here, but I watched the film. And you made a very nice presentation as to having more income because we're going to advertise on the bus. I spoke to Lori Torres, and I also looked at the bus contract. The bus contract, Lori said she was being limited to advertise inside the bus. The bus contract clearly says you could advertise any place on the bus. She was also asked by Mr. Black to gain advertising because I asked her I would probably advertise. She told me it's a linear advertisement and $25 per advertisement, and it'll appear on all 6 buses. Well, at $25 an advertisement, if you fill the bus up from the floor to the ceiling, it would only be a diminutive amount. Now, I know in other developments, they do advertise on the outside of the bus, so I want to bring it to everybody's attention. It's in the contract. You can advertise on the outside of the bus, and rather than ask Lori, you should get someone to try to do it who's a professional. I don't see at this moment that the advertising will increase our income to any extent that would be worthwhile. And if you like, I have a copy of the bus contract.
Thank you, sir. Just for one point of correction, I hope I didn't misspeak at the first meeting. The number that I have displayed here and on the budget from the first meeting did not include any advertisement from the bus, but I did want to point out that not only the bus, but channel 590, 591 advertisements, we have not factored into this budget. However, we did start the process of looking into that because we too think that it's a good idea. And, you know, I've talked about this before over the last few years. The idea of privatizing some of these functions could be financially beneficial for UCO in the future, so I don't disagree with that. So I do agree with you. I don't have anything in the budget as of right now. We did talk about that we were going to try to have something in the numbers by the 3rd budget meeting to include any advertisement from the buses or any advertisements on 590 and 591.
I have another comment.
Yes, sir.
I haven't been able to ascertain it, but several years ago, an independent outfit was engaged at $975 a month. I don't see it. Do we still have that expense? Is that outfit still there? Is there anybody else who's providing that function that we're paying for?
I'm not sure, what's the 975 pay for?
That 975, I believe, was for an individual or an advertising agency to help us get advertising. And it was specifically pegged at 975 because our bylaws call for anything over 1,000 or over had to get approved by the delegate assembly. So at pegging 975 a month, it never went to the delegate assembly, but I doubt that 975 a month is not more than $1,000 when you add up 12. So I think we have to know, is there any agent, when you call now, you don't get UCO when you want to put an advertisement in. Is there someone getting paid?
We'll go ahead and look into that. Is there a recurring charge?
Yes. We do have a monthly charge, yes. And we do pay our advertiser for
Yes.
the reporter.
Okay, so where is that in our expenses?
That would be down at the bottom under the reporter expenses.
I don't see it.
It will be all the way at the bottom under reporter, so we can make a note of that when we get down to that number. As of right now, this 103937 equals the expense amount.
But that's an estimate.
Yes.
Okay, so here's a general comment before we go further. I've looked at your old presentation and the new presentation, and I looked at the 2018 budget as it appeared in the UCO reporter. I also compared it to our audited statement. There appears to be a substantial difference between the 2018 budget as reported and the expenses that are on the audited statement. Now, obviously, their combinations are not visible here, but I did check some of the numbers, and it doesn't match. The 2018 budget as reported doesn't match the audited statement. And I think we're missing something. On every budget, we should have the budget compared to the actual expenses and note the differences before we project to the next year.
I don't disagree with that. We'll go ahead and, Chris, can you just make a note? Grab the 2018 audited financial statements and then we'll compare it to QuickBooks 18.
When you do your next presentation, can you put the combinations in so we can follow it?
The breakdown for the reporter?
No, the whole statement. The financial statement by the auditor shows $6,600,000 as the actual expenses. That is way different than the budget.
Okay, yeah, we can take a look at that and try to get an answer about that for 2018.
I think it should be presented. I think it should be presented at the next meeting.
Okay, with whatever the difference is?
No, the whole thing, 2018 budget, 2018 actual, the difference. Then you go forward to 2019. One of the cardinal rules when you prepare a budget is to compare the budget to the actual, note the difference, and if it's in excess, it should be applied to the next year, which would be 2019. So I don't see that, although on the audited statement it clearly shows it.
Okay, well, yeah, we'll definitely take a look into that and see what the difference is.
Okay, that's for that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Lori Torres, Chairperson of Transportation. I just want to clarify something that Ed said. The advertisement on the bus, I did pursue it, and it costs $25 for 6 months, and it goes on all of the buses. So this is not going to be a money-making deal.
Is the $25 the charge from us to them or from them to us?
Whoever advertises. And the space for the advertisement on the bus is approximately 11.5 inches high and 3.5 feet long. So,
And you're saying that the charge would only be $25
to
per
the
bus?
advertiser. Yes. So, it's not a money-making,
Well, I think we dictate, and at 1,800 steps on average per bus, 1,800 entrances to the bus each week on average, I would think that we'd be able to dictate our own sales price and not let them dictate, because I think that there are, at least from what we've looked into, there are going to be different advertisers that are going to be paying more because for one, there's only such a small amount of supply for the amount of advertisement, and there are going to be companies that will want to advertise, especially with, benefiting UCO, Publix, what were some of the other ones? The health insurance, Humana, the pharmacy, I think that was one of them. So I think that, I don't know if we should necessarily limit us to, $25, but if it were $25 per bus per month for, I don't know how many spots there are, 8?
it's 11.5 inches.
Oh yeah, but how many spots are those available on each bus?
Inside the bus.
Mhm.
And it's not
Talk into the mic.
That's inside the bus. All right, that would be the size of the space, and the bus company does not make anything on it. You have to produce your own ad, your own signs in there, and UCO does get the $25, but it's not a money-making.
Well, let's continue to look into this if we could. Oh, sorry, ma'am, you're next.
I just have a question for Lori. Where did you come up with $25 only?
From the
That's
bus
like-
company.
Well, they don't dictate to us, we dictate what we're gonna charge.
All right,
So I think that should go to the offices or transportation.
Okay, that came from the bus company.
Understood. Yeah, I could understand where, they may come up with a few ideas of numbers, being in that business. But I think that, once we've dictated and at least looked into it before the third budget meeting, I think we can come up with our own price, because we have, I believe, the right to advertise, and whatever value we do advertise at, we can charge, that valuation. And I think by, at least from what Chris and I have learned after the first meeting, making it a bulk deal where they're on every single bus with the same advertisement,
They are.
that it becomes financially more feasible for companies like Humana, Publix, pharmacy, things like that, to want to advertise, because they get the not just a better chance of being seen, but they get repeated views over and over and over again, and everyone knows that gets ingrained and then suddenly becomes
I agree. but
a follow through.
No, you're absolutely correct, but this is the figures that I received from our representative at the bus company.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll look into that, and we'll see what the dictated prices will be and what the market will bear.
Okay, incidentally, there is a bus transportation meeting next Tuesday at 9 o'clock at UCO.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I want to further state that the bus contract says not only can we advertise on the outside of the bus, the only thing is we have to include an advertisement for them, which is nominal. And again, I want to stress, without advertising on the outside of the bus, I don't care if you have 2 million people riding the bus, it's going to be the same 2 million people who use the bus. And outside advertising has the chance of bringing in some more revenue, because the viewers are greater than everybody here in the village. We must have most of those riders are repeats, so you're showing the same advertisement if you have 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000.
Some of the talk was about a rotation where we would basically give the statistical data that we're aware of, and then having a rotation of where you buy a 6-month package, something like that, and it could be a competitor to an advertisement that's in the Reporter or something like that, and that would boost our advertising revenue because we'd be able to really try to, not that we're competing with the Reporter, but it's giving people who may not have an opportunity to advertise in the bus, and then also any advertisements that come from the bus or from Channel 590 or 591 may also in turn want to advertise in the paper. So we think that by going back and forth that we could really strengthen our advertising gross revenue because we'd have more media to present in.
I would make another suggestion, that we have a formal advertising rate sheet. And that rate sheet, whether it's for the Reporter, for the bus, for anything, should be published in the UCO Reporter. Because that way, people can see it, they don't have to call up. Many times you call, it takes a long time. So it's just another piece of printing, and we print thousands of papers. So a rate sheet for each is really appropriate to be visible to everybody.
I don't disagree with that. The only thing that I will say in many years of working with advertising companies, the reason why you don't post the rate sheet is because different people pay different things. And if I go to a company like Humana, Blue Cross, one of the big guys who have $76 billion worth of profit last year, I think the market bears a higher rate than if I'm doing Joe's Handyman Services. I sometimes think that it's unfair to post the rates because if a small business comes to us and wants to get their name out there, they're brand new, advertising may cut them a deal versus if you have a company like Blue Cross Blue Shield come in who may pay a different rate. Yes, ma'am.
With respect, I think that we've taken this topic as far
Understood.
as we
We'll
need
move
to.
on from here.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item we have is investigation fees. Under investigation fees, just like we talked about last time, the $130,000 of incoming money equals the $130,000 of outgoing money. Interest income. So as of right now, this is the number that we have, $93,035. That number is probably going to change and increase before the third meeting. As of right now, the CD that we had earned us about 1.7%, and Seacoast is earning us about 1.82%. Now, if you take the current rates plus what we have in reserves, we've talked about going back to a plan of either putting it in Seacoast, earning the 1.82%, or going after the CDs that are they're 1 year, 2.7% or so, and staggering larger amounts because we have additional money in reserves. By doing that, that should increase that number. I'm not sure when the next budget meeting is, but I know that next week we're looking into that to see what we can get this number to for 2020. Next item is installation luncheon. We're going to skip that for right now because there's a lot of talk about the installation luncheon, the Centurion, Welcome Committee, Volunteer, and New Resident. Right now, rental income. So if you look at the number here on the 2020 budget and seeing that it's lower than the rental income for the estimated 2019, the only reason for that is I'm trying to calculate what the increase is, so I just went conservative just to drop in a number. So I took what the rate was for January 2018, multiplied it by 12, but we do have a built-in rate increase that happened in 2019, and there's one that happens in 2020, so that number will be higher next time. Laundry income. So when you look at the budget amount versus the amount that we actually have, that's net of the expense for the passes. So we don't have a separate line item for that as of right now, but I believe with the amount that we have, we shouldn't have any purchases in 2020, so I left the number the same. Laundry income, the estimate being $20,621. The laundry income varies quite regularly, including that we have people that come down for just the winter and people that leave for the summer. So we left that one down at 18,000 as well, which was our 2019 budget number. So we kept that conservative. Do I have any questions about the income side of the budget? Yes, sir.
Well, I don't see a breakdown of what generates our rental income. I would assume part of it is the rental income that we get from Seacrest for using our facilities to park. Okay. Now, as I understand it, Century Village Real Estate is moving into our building there. Okay. And we also have our new Wi-Fi, Atlantic Broadband. Now, Century Village is not going to build a building overnight, and they are taking space. So my question is, has an amount been determined, has a lease been signed, and what rental is Century Village Real Estate paying to us, since we pay the whole dump to WPRF? So any income that's derived should be payable to us. And has that been factored into the budget?
The only two numbers that I have per month in the rental income are Atlantic Broadband and Seacrest. So if there's something else that there's a lease or something that's being signed, I don't have a record of that in front of me right now.
I believe
Yes,
that.
sir. Oh,
But I assume that since they're already in the building, it would be correct to have a lease signed with Century Village Real Estate, which is available before they move in. So I think, is there anybody here on the board who's aware of
Somebody's
it?
gonna answer you if you give them a chance.
yes, sir.
I didn't say shut up. Okay. Yeah, the lease is being chewed on, it's being modified, but I think the bottom line of your question is $1,600 a month, and that lease is not to exceed 6 months. And that should be more than adequate to put in their new trailer.
Is it a trailer or a building?
It's a modular building. $1,600, 572 square feet, I believe. The old sewing room. So that's where we are. We just had a big discussion on this yesterday at operations. And that lease has to be modified. We threw out a few undesirable items in it. So $1,600 a month, not to exceed 6 months
So
without,
that's roughly $8,000.
right?
Now, are we taking that into account? Sebastian doesn't know about it, and while it's only going to go partially into 2020, it's really an adjustment of our income in 2019, which you're basing our 2020 budget on.
It's going to be an income line in the WPRF budget.
Oh, not UCO.
No, not you.
Why would it be in the WP, it's going to be a reduction of the WPRF budget?
Yes, going to offset our coupon. Not a lot, but a little bit. Every little bit helps.
Why should it be there? Why shouldn't it be in our budget?
Because UCO, it turns out, is not a tenant lessee of the clubhouse. The 309 associations are. UCO only signed the operations agreement. And so that's really how that works out. Does it matter whether the offset in your coupon is left pocket or right pocket?
Well, that's why we have two pockets, and unfortunately, in regard to the WPRF budget, anybody here who's a delegate doesn't get to vote on it. And there have been some substantial items that should have been challenged and less. This is a de minimis amount, but that's why you have it. And so somehow it should be factored in.
Not in our budget. Different budget. WPRA.
Understood, I wrote that down. Okay, so now we'll move down to the expenses. We're gonna do exactly what we did last time, talk about each one of the line items and go through it. We'll start off with laundry expense. Right now, we separate the electricity and water. In the 2019 budget, we had electricity and water for the laundry room under a group, on a group expense under the general, you're selling general administrative expenses. Instead, we wanted to see what the profitability was from a suggestion at one of the delegate meetings. So we've separated electricity and water from the general side for laundry and moved it over to the laundry side. So we've started our first budget for that, and under electricity, we have 2,205, which includes a 5% increase just in case. We also have a water line item for 8,770. What I did on the general side is I reduced those two amounts from what we previously thought we were going to estimate for those numbers, so that way it still evens out with the 5% increase. For the propane, I increased that to 7,000 from our 2019 budget of 6,500. I left the repairs at 4,000. There's some thought about whether or not I may reduce this number for the 2020 budget and put something in the reserves to cover laundry and laundry equipment. I think that that's probably a better idea. We've been moving towards that more and more these last few years of reserving for some of these. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a big ticket item compared to the budget as a whole. However, it's something that if we just built up the funds for, it'd be much easier than having to try to account for what that number will be each year. So I think that will help out a little bit. Do I have any questions about the laundry expenses?
We're missing an expense.
What expense do you think we're missing?
I wrote it down, but let me take a look. When I compare that to what you allocated to the Hugo reporter, so I'll just turn to 7,700.
How about moving on and coming to
Good
that?
idea.
Understood. Let me just write this down really quick.
Okay. It's not over 10,000.
Go ahead, next.
Understood. Okay, the next line item we have is transportation. In the transportation number for the 2019 budget of $896,370, that included 2 excursions per month. In our 2020 budget, as of right now, just factoring that in, we factored in 1 excursion per month instead of 2, which is about a $7,200 a year savings. For the fuel bus, we left it the same as the 2019 budget. Plus or minus, I would say a few dollars. Right now, we have an estimate of $83,108 for 2019, but obviously that number could change as time goes on. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Phyllis Zeidman, and I
Morning,
work
Phyllis.
on the Transportation Committee. When we, excuse me, when we wrote the contract, it was supposed to be up to 4 trips a month. Then they cut it down to 3. Then they cut it down to 2. I don't see anything on this budget where anything else was cut but this. And what are you going to do with this other $7,200 that you're taking off there? Why don't you take off an expense from something else? Why are you taking it off from the excursion bus? It's the only thing that some of these older people get out to do. And all you want to do is take everything away from some of these senior citizens. Nobody here in this room even knows what goes on with those people that go on these excursion trips. Not one of you have ever been on one of these trips to find out what's going on. What do you plan to do with the extra $7,200 that you're taking away?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Phyllis. Very passionate speech. I don't discount what you're saying. The whole point of having these committee meetings is to bring things like that up. Phyllis has clearly said, people want more excursions. You've cut it from 4 to 3 to 2, now to 1. What are you going to do about it? She made the assertion that maybe the people in here haven't been on an excursion, don't understand the power of the excursion. I don't discount that one bit. If everyone wants more excursions and they all want to pay for it, we put in the budget. That's the whole point of this committee, a point of this meeting for the budget committee to take that into account. So I think that if we want to do more excursions, that suggestion is why we do these meetings. So it's not that I'm taking away excursions or anything like that. I think it's more about everyone wanting to do it and pay for it.
Just so that you're aware, Phyllis, the bus contract has nothing to do with excursion buses. Excursion buses have nothing to do with the bus contract. So stand corrected, what you're saying. You're not in the bus contract.
But when we wrote the contract, we wrote the excursion buses in. And what do you plan to do with the extra $7,200? Why don't you cut some of your kitchen expenses for $4,700?
Originally,
Good morning, sir.
We started out with 4, then we went to 3, then 2. Now you want to take away another one?
Phyllis, let me tell you. Originally, there were 4 excursions. What committee decided to lower the excursion trips? Can I ask you? What was the committee? Which committee?
It's
I
this
don't-
committee.
Pardon me?
It's this committee. It's being presented today. It's this committee. Finance. The budget committee.
Oh, the budget committee decided to lower it? When did you decide to lower it? When you didn't have any meetings? You didn't have any budget meetings until the last few weeks.
You do understand this is not being decided by talking to you. We're going over things.
Hey, don't talk down to me. I asked you
I'm
a
not
simple
talking,
question.
I'm not
I want
talking
an
down to
answer.
you. I'm trying to answer your question. This discussion that's going on with this group is being talked on so we get a sense of how people feel about what we put forward.
What people-
This committee will
this
make the
committee?
this committee will make the decision later today.
But did this committee decide to go from 4 to 3?
It was proposed in this discussion to be considered.
You're not answering. I asked you, did this committee decide to go from 4 excursions to 3 excursions? This committee.
Nobody has decided this at all.
So why did it go to 3 from 4?
Because we proposed it for consideration.
Well, let me just say something real quick. If everyone could just hold on for 1 second. The whole point.
Sebastian, maybe you could give me an answer.
Let me try. So this group of people decides. Excuse me.
Which
This
group you're pointing?
I'm pointing to you. I'm pointing to you. I'm pointing to you. I'm pointing
The
to all of you.
residents?
But let me
The
talk for just 1
residents?
second. Let me just jump in there real quick. You all, as the residents, decide how much you want to pay and what you want included in it. I think that we're going about this the wrong way. I would happen to say that, I'm not trying to be biased, but I agree with what Phyllis has said. When you take away something that people want and people use, it can be disconcerting. However, let's get some statistical data. How many people go on those excursions? 50, 55, every single month, 12 months a year.
The same people.
The same people go on the excursions. So,
Not always the same people.
well, I just want to go into something. So let's just say that 85% of those same people, we all have to answer to 7,800 residents. So I think that letting the residents decide what they want to pay for, I'm not saying 55 people can't get together and get a bus and do an excursion or anything like that. And I'm not saying that UCO wants to necessarily take away an excursion, where they've gone from 4 to 3. But I think that, we have to think of the bigger picture here, and the whole point of these meetings is to decide things like that. If someone wants to make the proposition, listen, we need to go from 2 excursions to 4 excursions, and we increase the budget by, let's just say it's $14,400, all the residents are in agreement, the budget committee's in agreement, we do it. If the price goes up a little bit per unit per month, so be it. Yes, ma'am.
Bobby Levin, I'm also on the Transportation Committee. A lot of this discussion should certainly take place within the Transportation Committee, not taking up the time here. But I'd just like to clarify something that I've ascertained in the few years that I've been on the committee. We know that excursion buses are not part of the Transportation Committee budget. Through the years, because we know that people enjoy the trips, that expense has been added to the budget. It got out of hand. At that point, in an attempt to balance the budget, we said 4 excursion trips to shopping malls is getting a little out of hand. We dropped it to 3. Then I came on the committee and I said, there are a lot of people in the village who would like to get out and not go to shopping malls. There are other places that people would like to visit. So we started planning excursion trips that did not cost any money, but people who didn't want to go to shopping malls also had a chance to get out. So where it stands now is about every 2 months we've planned a trip to another location. I think the budget, the proposed budget is reflecting maybe going to shopping malls is not the best use of our money. The regular buses go out to shopping malls during the month. We cannot send buses out to shopping malls. We have to balance the budget, but still pay attention to that there are people in the village who do want to get out. And I think this will be taken up at the Transportation Committee, not here.
Yes, ma'am. Just
Marcia
so everyone knows.
Zaccardi.
Just so everyone knows.
Excuse me, Sebastian.
Oh.
The excursion buses were never part of the transportation contract until a few years back. I don't know exactly when it started. But if people want to take trips, they should join clubs and pay for the trips like other people do. The transportation was not meant to take them on these trips. It's ridiculous. It was meant to take them to places that they need to go. Shopping, doctors, things that we absolutely have to go, and people who do not have cars need to get there. And that's what it was meant for, transportation, not for excursion trips.
Understood. When you do the math, it comes out to be about $10 to $11 per person per trip. So that's the cost of getting the bus and going on one excursion. So 55 people at $10 to $11 per person equals about 600. Times 12 is 7,200. So the 14,400 spent will be spent in 2019 will be for the 2 excursions per month for the 12 months, coming out to be about $10 to $11 per person. Yes.
A quick trip down memory lane. This has come up before. Perhaps 3 years ago, that's just a guess on my part, I submitted the question to our attorney, Rod Tennyson. Can we declare the excursion bus costs common expenses? Flat no. They are not common expenses. And we were on the edge of terminating them, and we took it to the delegates, if you will recall. The delegates overwhelmingly voted to continue these costs. So this is not a simple task for this committee or transportation. We're flying right in the face of our attorney, and if somebody wants to get up one day and launch a lawsuit, in terms of making this a common expense, they're gonna have a case. All right, because the attorney is very clear, chapter and verse, that the excursion buses are not common expenses. So everybody's gotta think about this, as to where you wanna go in terms of these excursion buses. I mean, I certainly resonate with what Phyllis had to say, but you don't make a lot of money going against legal advice.
Sebastian,
Yes, sir.
first of all, I want to correct Mr. Fausto. If you read our bus contract, we have specifically in the contract a price for excursion buses. What you don't have is how many. When you look at it, when it was 4, which it was in 2018, it came to $24,000. Now we say, how many people ride the excursion buses and where they go? Where they go is whoever is planning the excursion bus. That's where they go. As to the amount of people, having discussed this at length with Lori Torres, says that every time they have an excursion, the amount of people applying goes well beyond the capabilities of those who can go. It's very nice to say Mr. Tennyson, very well and a seasoned attorney, but he just made a major mistake in something that I did. He said no, it was yes, and he had to correct himself. Anybody here who's willing to spend the money to go and sue us, God bless them. The answer is, the excursion bus is not transportation, it's entertainment. It's no different than having a free dance while you pay for the shows. It's no different than having a free movie when you pay for the shows. If it went to the people, we talk about $300 and some odd thousand to replace tennis courts. We only have 150 tennis players. How does that compare to $24,000 a year? It's diminious. We are spending a lot of time, and people are making a decision without really going to who they should go, which is the delegates. For my part, it's entertainment. It's no different than going to the movies. We don't charge for the movies. Has anybody got another opinion from another attorney? I did, on a different matter, and Mr. Tennyson was definitely wrong. I think this should be tabled until there is a survey of the delegates, and it's put in the paper, and people have a chance to come forward and review it. If you can go to the movies for nothing, you should be able to go on an excursion bus. We have to be, the goose and the gander have to be equal. There is no law that says you have to have free movies. There is no law that you have to have free dances. So let's don't dance to a different tune.
Sebastian, can I say something?
Yes,
Can I
sir.
be acknowledged? If you look at your budget from WPRF, the movies are definitely not free. They're $550 a movie that's being charged. So everybody here is paying for it. They're not free.
Why aren't they paying for the shows?
We are paying for the shows.
We are paying for the shows, but
But you're paying for the movies too, Ed.
we pay out of our own pocket. I don't care what's on WPRS budget. We pay out of our own pocket.
I think that many times we only look at dollars and cents and we don't look at people. All of us are getting older. There are many of us who will not be driving in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and we will need places to go. Right now,
We have buses that take people to the grocery store and the necessity places, but we don't have places that they can go other than that. I feel that personally, I've never driven or ridden one of those buses. However, I gladly pay every month for the buses because I think they're wonderful. I think that they are certainly a service to everyone who can't drive in this village. And I feel the same way about the excursion buses. My feeling is, please leave them in the budget and provide that service for those of us or you who can't drive your own cars.
Hi, Joyce Reese.
Closer.
Joyce Reese. We're not an assisted living community. I don't think it is our job, as somebody responded, we go to the malls, we go to the stores, we even go to doctor's offices. I really think that is sufficient. We have spoken in the past about even charging a few dollars for people to go on the excursion buses. As far as the theater, we pay $10, but that is a subsidized price. I mean, you go anywhere else. You go to the Crackers, you pay $40, $45. So that's a different story. So I don't believe the excursion buses are a necessity.
This is going to make me very unpopular, but I don't care. I believe that people should pay for the excursion buses themselves. I personally know of people that have wads of money that use those excursion buses because they don't like to drive distances, but they certainly could afford to pay for it. I just want you to keep that in mind. Thank you.
I just had a quick question, just by a show of hands. If we charged for excursion bus rides, would everyone be in favor of that?
It depends where the excursion is.
Sorry,
What's the cost?
forget where the excursion's going. You pick the place in your own mind. If it was $10 per person, would you go on the excursion? Just show of hands.
It's more than that.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, before we go into subsidies and anything like that, all I had, 7. I just wanted to know, 8, 9, all right, 10. Oh, we got some hands going up now. So let me just say something. So if we charged for the excursions, would people be willing to pay for them? Of those 11 people who raised their hands, did you go on excursions last year? Perfect, thank you. 2, 3. Okay, so I think that's my point. The 3 of the people that raised their hands of the 11 would be willing to pay to go on the excursions, depending on where it goes, which would obviously defray the cost, and you could do as many excursions as you were able to generate funds for. Just hold on one second, I just want to finish this thought. So if that were the case, I think that that's what could be part of what we look into. Yes, ma'am.
Again, I say, a lot of this discussion should be held in the Transportation Committee.
Sure, I just wanted to bring it to a
But
close.
to the question of would you pay for an excursion, I can only speak personally. I would not be willing to pay for an excursion that's going to Mario the Baker and Walmart. I would be willing to pay for an excursion, for instance, to the trip we have planned in November to the Elliott Museum. I think the answer to this whole question of excursion, whether or not we want to pay for excursion trips, perhaps limited to 1 a month to a shopping mall and 1 a month to someplace else where people are interested in going. But again, this is conversation for the Transportation Committee. We're spending too much time here discussing it.
I don't think so.
Sebastian, I also want to tell you, we're supposed to be out of here in about 15 minutes. So let's try to get through the second page,
Sebastian,
please.
Okay.
I think the whole question should be decided by the delegate assembly, not by 8 or 10 individuals to decide something like
That's the
this.
intention.
Excuse me, did I interrupt you?
I'm trying to tell you, that's the
Just a minute, please. I'm not finished. Mr. Israel mentioned that the delegate assembly overwhelmingly voted in favor of the trips. Am I right, David? Did you say that?
No, that's not what he said. They voted to keep them.
That's what I mean, okay. So I think it should be put back to the delegate assembly, Sebastian, to decide if we decide to keep the 4 trips, not 8 or 10 people on the financial committee.
Understood.
That's where it should be done.
Understood. Okay. Security. Right now, we have a 5% increase that travels over about a 3-year period. So we have a rather conservative number in the sense that we have it all built in the first year. Whether that trickles out into 21 or 22, we'll go ahead and see. When we look at the estimated number, obviously, I think that either 1 month had 5 weeks or something like that, because it looks a little low for what we had for the budget. So our 5% increase is off of the budget. Investigations, if you'll remember, the revenue number was 130. The investigations number is 130. Statutory limit by $100. You can't charge more than that. So if you have an international purchaser, you may spend $700-800 for an investigation versus maybe $50. Landscape maintenance. On the first meeting, we talked about landscape and irrigation. We had both of those numbers separated. Yes, I went through security.
Any reason why?
The 5% increase?
It doesn't say anything, it just shows an increase.
It should say 5% increase on your sheets.
It does. But is that a year?
So the 5% is built up, they can go up to 5% over a 3-year span. But right now, for the number I have it based as the 5% increase from the 2019 budget amount, just so we have a number, so if they decide to use the whole 5% in year 1, they have that ability.
5% of 921 is about $46,000. That would make it 967. You have $1,064,000. You're way over.
I think you're taking both the numbers. You're taking both the numbers, not both, just account 7301, not the entire 7,300. Because remember, 7,300 also includes investigations, which is the number from the top. Yes, sir.
At the meeting that you weren't in attendance, that came up. And I think it was me who brought up that if you have a 5% increase and a 5% increase and a 5% increase, it's a lot more than 5%. Mr. Black commented that anybody who would sign a contract that increases 5% a year has to be a fool.
True, that's why this is 3 years.
Okay, well, 3 years is also an extraordinary. Now you say it could be. I haven't seen the security contract. Did you read it?
I did not read it, no.
Well, I think it's imperative that when you prepare a budget, you read for yourself. There are other areas where you extrapolated percentages that are well beyond what's in the budget. Not being critical, but we're here to do a job. So if we keep increasing something that doesn't increase, what we're doing is inflating a budget. A budget should be a reflection of our best estimate, not just increasing. So I think before you just move on, you should asterisk that, check the contract, and say what's happened in the past, what's happening now.
Agreed. We'll do that. Okay, next, landscape maintenance. So under landscape maintenance, we used to have 2 different line items, irrigation and landscape. We talked about at the last meeting that we were going to combine those to have 1 line item. So as of right now, we have an estimate of 288. Again, there are a few things that are probably going to happen as the year starts to close out. You saw that they increased the hurricane to category 2. Probably get the tail end of it, but so that could add to this. As of right now, I have the number the same as the 2019 budget. I'm not aware of any increases at this point, but as we look into it, just like we did last year, before the 3rd meeting, we'll get into that.
Excuse me, Sebastian.
Yes, sir.
At the meeting again that you weren't in attendance, a question was raised as to how come irrigation and the other part increased dramatically. It definitely increased dramatically over the 2008. Donald Foster, our CAM, specifically said when I raised that question that in 2018, a new contract was signed with Seacrest, and all the expenses which were paid throughout other items in the past are included. Are you aware, and has there been a new contract signed? I have an old contract, and it appears Seacrest contracts renew every 2 years. So in 2018, it would have called for renewal. I checked with Dom Negagio, who's on the bid committee. He says he's not aware of any new contract being signed.
Understood. I'll have to look into that, but I can't answer the question about the difference between 2018, 19, and 20 when it comes to that. Before, the landscaping was split out and was underselling general administrative. I said, well, what's the point of having the landscape and irrigation separated? It didn't really make much sense, but the idea was back in the prior years was that irrigation would be some large unknown expense as irrigation problems happen. Irrigation including sewer, water lines, all of those things. I said, well, wait a second. I said, that doesn't make much sense. I said, let's go ahead and include both the numbers, landscape and irrigation, because we're going to factor in something in the reserves to cover our piping and sewage. So when we get to reserves, we'll see where we're building up those funds to be able to take care of any of the major ones. So we left those two line items the same. When you look at the old 2018 number compared to 19 and 20, you will see a difference because they were split out before. Okay, next, cable. So as of right now for cable, I have the Atlantic broadband for the 12 months, lower than obviously the 2019 estimated because we had the 6 months and 6 months, so there's a little bit of a difference. Ambulance contract, left it the same. Why it says $137,040, I don't know, but $2 difference is fine. So right now we have it left there as the $137,038. Changes. So let's get on to general administrative.
It says here, keeping it and a question mark. The ambulance contract says keeping it and a question mark.
No possessive word. I meant like keeping it.
Well, let me get into it, okay? If anybody remembers years ago, we had another company that did our ambulance service. The state came and mandated that we use AMR. And we couldn't use, we tried, we went to all kinds of lawyers, we went to the judge, we went to court. We were stuck with AMR. I wonder, is it still the same? Does anybody know? Are we stuck with
Medix
AMR?
was bought out. Medix was bought out by AMR. They're now the same company.
I can answer that
No,
to
but
you.
what I'm
I'll
asking-
answer you, Myron. The county are the ones who have a contract with AMR, who bought out, like you said, Medix, and they're the only ones you can use. Doesn't say you have to use them. It says if you're going to use an ambulance service, those are the ones you use because they get a price. Yes, it's a contract with
There's
the county.
nobody else to get, in other words, just AMR. We're finished, we're stuck.
You got it.
Okay.
Again, Mr. Sebastian, at the last meeting, which you weren't in attendance, there was a very extended discussion as to whether AMR should continue in our budget. Mr. Fausto said he didn't get any response.
I got it.
Okay, I'm glad you got it. What is it?
It was put out, it's on the website, it was published.
That's
Our cost for, they did 460 calls in 2018 and 260 in 2019. If you take it out just from home to hospital, they did 70 calls. So if you divide 70 into $11,000 a month, it gives you an idea of what the cost is per ambulance ride.
Well, that certainly is a great cost. Now, a contract is negotiated. let's go one step further. AMR is not an independent company. It's been bought out by Global. Now, they're not a little company, I don't think, because having checked it, the selling price to Global was only $2.5 billion. I put a call into AMR this week and voiced our complaint. It was on Monday. It's been recorded. And I'm assured to get an answer back. And one of the things, now that we have that, I will relay to them, because I was promised to call that, and say, if this, I also said the inference is you only have 2 ambulances. Now, the lack of usage may be because of the lack of service. Now, right now, we're not voting this time to take it out, but I think the report from AMR and what they say, and maybe this is negotiable. We had an extended discussion. I don't agree with Mr. Fausto's recognition of what an ambulance contract is. I don't want to get into it now. However, it's an important thing to certain people, and maybe it's down because of their service. So right now it's being left in. I will inform everybody when I get the call back. I asked, I always do, to speak to the president of AMR. Thank you.
Fausto, can I just ask, reiterate?
Sure.
We had 70 calls from the
For
ambulance to the hospital.
For 2019, actual calls, out of the 260 calls that were made, 70 were going from the resident to the hospital.
So I could believe what they told me when they took me to the hospital, and the people in the ambulance told me they only had 2 ambulances working in our county. 70 calls seems feasible with 2
I can't
ambulances.
attest, all I can tell you is
Right,
that
no,
the
but I'm
numbers,
saying it seems feasible, doesn't it? 2
yeah, the
ambulances.
numbers that we got took over 5 weeks, speaking to 2 different individuals, and they gave us numbers. Whether they're right or wrong, these are the numbers we the officers asked, can you give us what service you've offered to the residents? Okay? This is the answer that we got. It's right now, it's very little.
I told you I waited 4 hours to get an ambulance.
Okay.
Yeah, Sebastian, I'm sorry, I have to leave, so I have a question. If you can jump a few steps ahead about 7611 insurance, I see that the 15% seems to be a little bit high. It's a guesswork. Now, usually there's a surplus left at every time. Every year there's usually, because they estimate they don't want to assess people. So what are you going to do with the money with the excess? Because we pay right away, and there should be access right away. Even though there are some finances, the insurance companies get the money right away, at 1/1, whatever it is. So what is the intention of doing on the surplus? It should be, in my mind, returned to the people. 7611 insurance. The surplus on the premiums.
I think he's talking about if it doesn't reach the 83,418. I think that's a decision for the delegate and the residents, what happens with surplus. I do know that, right now, at least one of my goals for the last few years has been increasing the reserves, so that way we don't, if something unexpected happens, we're prepared. So, if you were to ask me of what my suggestion would be, I think building reserves is good. Now, this 15% increase, we believe it could be spot on, so this may be a moot point.
If I could interject just a second. They did a review of the properties in the village and found our value went up 10.1%. So whatever little increase they may want to add to it or not is the final answer, but we never get that till December. So in December, we'll tell you what to pay, but we're funding a higher rate because we don't know where it's going yet.
No, I said it's okay to do higher rate, 15, whatever.
Well,
What
we
we're
come
gonna do with
down,
the surplus.
we come down to the net when we know what that is. We've done that every year.
So you was keeping the money usually?
No, what we do is give you the proper number, because we will know that when they've actually set the bill.
Yeah, and you'll see that we didn't have a surplus in the 19 year either. That's 72,537 what was actually paid out in January of 2019. and we had budgeted 70,805, but from what I believe was around 60 some odd thousand, and we had an increase in there that we had received from Tony, and the number was, almost spot on.
But that's the point. Come December 5th, we generally know the number. At that point, we'll give you the actual number.
Okay, just to answer your increase in value of the buildings, it's usually not the market value, but the repair value, so.
Yeah, that's the point.
Increase. It's not in the value, it's different than
It's
the
the
actual
cost,
repairs.
it's the cost of reproduction.
Okay, the next item we have is beautification. So, I made some changes, that I'll go over right now, that were, I would say, pretty substantial on the general administrative expenses. So, beautification. In my mind, I was thinking that beautification is a fund that, the committee comes up with of things that they want to do. And one of the problems I have with some budget line items is when you put an arbitrary amount on the profit and loss side, you lose the ability to, either have a well thought out idea or something that takes multi-years or a plan. So I moved it to reserves. So that number is still the 30,000, but it's on reserves. That way, if beautification says we've got a 2-year plan, I don't know what the committee says, but if they have that kind of idea, now they'll actually have a fund that they can pull out of, over a 2-year period of the 30,000. Whether it gets approved in 2021, obviously we don't know that now, but when you get to reserves, you'll see that it's funded for 1 year only, and what happens at the next budget committee for next year will be the difference, or if the committee comes up with something for 2020. Repairs and maintenance. The last time we met, I believe the number was 240, something like that, and I said, well, before the second meeting, like we always do, I want to go through, see if we have items that need to be covered under the reserves. I believe there were 2 items that I specifically pulled out, which was drainage and sewage, not adjusted on the reserve side, but I did adjust it on the P&L, took that number off, brought our 2020 budget down to 200 from 190. If that number goes down a little bit more, I'm trying to see if there were any other items. I only picked some of the bigger ones just to kind of get a better idea for the number. So I pulled that down. Yes, sir.
On the original distribution, on repairs and maintenance, it says not for roads. Now, that's still a lot of money to spend if it wasn't for the repairs of roads. Can you give us an idea? Your original amount was $240,000. You said the actual for 2018 was 237. I don't think that matches the report of the auditors, but we'll go to that. So if it's not for roads, and you pulled out a diminutive amount for 2 other items, what is the 200 and some odd thousand repairs are we doing?
So I don't know if I would go with that it was de minimis, the numbers that I pulled out. So I think I disagree with that part. However, it used to say not roads. The reason it said not roads, 2017 and prior, we had 2 line items. We had road repairs and we had repairs and maintenance, not roads. I don't know why. I took it out. I thought, it's repairs and maintenance, let's leave it as 1 line item. If anything, it's not even really maintenance, it's only repairs. The 190,000 that I have as the estimated number, it's very hard to estimate what's gonna break over the course of the year. For the numbers that I did pull out, I did believe that even if we had doubled the number for, I believe, the 80,000 that was spent year to date, double it is 160. So I think within the 190 estimate, I think it's perfectly fine, and I don't think it's materially different than before, especially when those reserve items were pulled out. When I went from 190 to 200, only a thought, just an idea. If there was something that, if something does break or something does happen, we do have the money for it. When I brought down the estimate, I brought down, I think this number was 240 on the last budget, brought it down to 200, but obviously we can revisit that.
Well, I personally think You reduced it, put 200,000 on an estimate for miscellaneous repairs. I think I'd like to get a better idea, and you took 6 months and you doubled it. It doesn't necessarily double in 6 months. And again, when we get to the end, we'll compare the total expenses you picked up against the audited report, and I think there's a substantial difference. But 200...
We'll get to the audit part later. I want to speed this up. For 2018 and prior, for the first 6 months, it was less than the second 6 months. There's a lot more things that happened from July to December. I don't disagree with that one bit. From January to June, we had, I think it was about 80,000. 80,000 and 80,000 is 160. You're right, I disagree. I think July through December will be more in expenses. Of those, I think that the estimate 190. I don't think the 200 is necessary out of line. I think it gives us a little bit of wiggle room if we think the repairs will cost more. As things get older, things start to break more and more repairs will be needed.
Well, if you reduced the amount by saying some stuff you took out of our reserves, is that correct?
I took things out of the P&L that should have been from reserves, yes.
So you reduced our reserves, is that it?
No. Well, yes and no. I took it out, but we have contributions to reserve, so I just am reducing the contribution to
So
reserve.
in essence, you reduced the reserve.
Yes, reduced contributions. Potato, tomato. Next, utilities, electric. We talked about this one earlier when we got to laundry. I did a 5% increase, you know, what fuel costs are and electric costs and water costs and all of those things. So I put a 5%. Now, of this 189, it's the total of what I thought the 2019 budget for electricity would be, plus 5%. That number will probably either reduce or even out at some point. Right now, with the estimates that we have, I'm just trying to make sure that we have the allocation good, because we want to be able to make sure that the laundry room is profitable and, you know, makes obviously fiscal sense. As of right now, I think we estimate the income will be 21,000, and I think our expenses are at 19,000, so that part's good. Yes, sir.
I have a new one, but 7101, you put down 1391, put down 5%, and it came to 5,000.
Which one?
7101.
That's from 814.
That's the laundry.
So laundry expense.
Laundry expense.
Yeah, well, he's not representing.
Yeah, that was 2020, and that was just the first estimate we had. In the 2019 estimate, we have 20,620 for gross receipts, expenses of 19,618, about $1,000 difference. What happens in 2020, I'm not exactly sure. I wanted to be conservative on the gross income line item for laundry, but I think that with the changes that we're going to make on the laundry expenses, by possibly moving some of those numbers to reserve for laundry equipment replacement, I think that will even thatself out. Because I think we attribute money to repairs that should really be from reserves. No, water, yeah, same thing with the electric. Next thing, legal fees. So, I don't know how well this works out. For the past few years, we've been contributing, or we've contributed money to a Millennium Fund. I thought, well, if we have to ever attribute money to future legal expenses, if we ever have to attribute money to legal expenses, I don't think it's such a bad idea to have a fund that's set up for a legal fund versus keeping it on the profit and loss for the budget. You know, I guess that will be debated, and we can talk about if there's going to be any changes by the third meeting, but I moved that to reserve, so we'll see that on reserves.
I have a question, I'm a little confused. I get confused with numbers.
I think you're wonderful. You're already doing a great job.
Thank you very much. There's $25,000 in legal fees, and then it says move to reserves. Now, the last time we had a meeting with the budget, the $25,000 was contested because the delegates voted it down. So now, if you're taking that $25,000
Okay,
and
you
you're
have to
putting-
mention what it was for.
Wait, shut up and let me Just, let me finish and then you can correct me. If the $25,000 that the delegates turned down is put into the reserves, does that mean it's still in the budget?
The screen went off.
It is not in the budget.
It is in the
What is in the budget has nothing to do with that particular issue. It was put in at his suggestion to see if we wanted to keep it. We didn't, we took it out.
You took it out,
Once
but then you
there-
took that 25,000, it says moved. But I'm saying 25.
Yeah, but some of that, if you recall, you had a lot of meetings doing bylaw changes, and that's driven the cost of legal fees up. In addition to a number of things Mr. Tennyson's been involved in with regard to issues that have troubled what's going on in the community. So the basic issue is he's now putting it in a reserve standing, but the 25 is not part of it anymore.
The
Y'all complained we took it out.
$25,000 is not part of
It
that
was
money.
a suggestion at one point, we took it out because
You took it out, and then why does it say move to reserves? I'm confused.
Because that's where he wants to keep it now. It's easier for
In other
her.
words, that same $25,000,
No.
no, it's a different
Yeah,
25,000?
the money that's being put
Oh,
away.
it's just the general 25,000
No,
that we're
no,
allocating?
it has nothing to do with 25. It has to do with the fact that what we're putting away is a fund to cover what legal fees may be.
Okay, if you're gonna put in a fund for legal fees, even though it says 25,000, how much money are you gonna put in legal fees? That's why I'm confused.
Oh, understood. When we get to the reserves, it says 50,000.
When we get to the reserves,
It says 50,000.
it's gonna be clear when we get to the reserves.
Yes.
Sebastian?
Do you understand that, Ed? Thank
Yes.
you.
Sebastian, at the last meeting, the budget showed $25,000 for a lawsuit. So Ed Black at the meeting said that you put in, listen to me, a lawsuit
Listen.
to sue OEO. That was put in the budget, $25,000. Are you familiar that the delegate assembly in Century Village is the law of the land, actually? Are you familiar with that?
I'm not.
Well, you know that anything that's brought up at the delegate assembly that's voted on, and it's voted no, against, or yes for, is the law of the land. $25,000 was brought up for a lawsuit to sue OEO. I asked Mr. Black, and he said, you put it in. He didn't know anything about it.
No. I agree with that.
You disagree?
No, I agree.
You did put it in?
I put it in. I agree.
Do you know you're not supposed to do things like that against the delegate assembly's vote?
I didn't know that there was a delegate assembly vote, which is why you can see that the comment has been changed, moved to reserves.
I just want to let you know that you shouldn't do it again, ever.
Great, thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I just want to say, if everybody will wait till we get to reserves, they will see, forget about OEO. On the last sheet was 50,000 legal. Your comment was wrong, and we know that, and you accepted it, so let's leave it go. We're just putting 50,000 away for legal. When you get to reserves, which I didn't want to jump to that now, where we have $300,000 and you're adding 50, you have an estimated life 6 years. I don't think that's correct, but when we get there, I'll tell you, because when do we have the Millennium Agreement coming up? That's the amount of years we should think about, not 6 years, and that's much
We'll go over
shorter.
that because I think there's one little thing there. Okay. Insurance we talked about, office supplies. So for office supplies, that number we left at the 10,000. We're paying for copier toner now from there. We used to pay about $24,000 a year with an HGI contract. I nixed the contract. We now do all of our maintenance and repairs ourselves on the copy machine. Everyone told us it wouldn't last. We showed them. So I left the number at 10,000, and we're still saving 24,000. So that's great. Accountants fees, annual audit. I've got 44,000 in there. That's for the CPA, the annual audit, all of those items. I left it roughly the same as the estimated amount. However, I think one of my issues with the estimated amount is I think I have one payment in there that won't be duplicated in the second half of 2019. So we'll adjust that for the third meeting and bring that down. Administration salary expense. Right now we have a 3% increase built into that. Payroll.
I have a question.
The two admin.
He's at John.
Sometimes I think we have a moral thing to do, okay? And I think we need a special line item when it comes to salary. We have a CAM that's grossly underpaid compared to the rest of the people in Palm Beach County. In fact, almost $30,000. We should have a line item for his raise for 10% this year and 10% next year, and he still will be at the bottom of the pay scale. But that's privileged information now. But we have to do the morally right thing here, you know? I mean, you can't expect somebody to work for nothing, you know? And he does a good job. Some people might like it, some people might not. But the bottom line is, we need to put a line item expense in there and let the officers or the General Assembly vote on it for a 10% raise this year and a 10% raise next year.
Excuse me, but we're talking money here. Don't bring in the CAM and how he's underpaid. Because wait a minute, you brought it up, I'm gonna finish it. When you hired him, he didn't have any experience. He had to go get a license. He was a friend of somebody here. So please, don't bring up the CAM. We're talking expenses, so leave the CAM out of it. Thank you. Leave it out.
Related payroll taxes, computer and related equipment. So in 2019, we had budgeted 42,000, of which we may still spend on a server upgrade. I reduced the number for 2020 and I moved the excess to reserves and created I would say a computer technology fund. I think that as we get more and more equipment needs and upgrades, telephones, things like that, I adjusted that number down to include a budgetary line item for it, and I did the same thing with telephone. Channel 63, got it 306 a month, so I adjusted the estimate down. Computer tech support, no line item there, it's under 7622. We'll merge 7626 with 7622. Pest control, the number that we had before, the estimate was a little high. Do you want to just point out the reserves really quick? Okay. Is there any other questions from this page? I can scroll down a little bit. Yes.
What does that mean after channel 63?
Oh, the zero?
There's no cost for the community channels at all.
Wait, the channel 63?
591, 592, they're provided per contract.
7624.
Now,
David,
there are costs involved in uploading data,
and maintaining.
and that must be what
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, fine.
That's what you're dealing with if you have to replace equipment and hire.
Not only Dimitri, it's also like
Steve.
the camera breaks, we have to replace it, or the computer has to be repaired.
So there's some maintenance to it.
And chips.
Well, yeah, some of that is from the reserve item. Yeah, that's smart communities.
I have one question.
Yes.
The administrative salaries, who does that include?
The two people.
Who?
The two administration staff. Rhoda and Donald.
Rhoda?
Okay, let's just fly through this really quick so we can get to reserves. Okay, pest control, I reduced the number from what we had last time. I have the actual 2 invoices, so we upped it from 5,500 to 5,796. You know, they're spraying around the bus stops. Go to reserves, okay.
We go ahead, Tom. We're well past the time we should have left.
Okay, under reserves. Third page. So I made some changes from the last meeting that we talked about, and I just wanted to go over them with you real quick. Again, we follow pooled reserves, which means nothing's actually specifically allocated to anything. However, we do have separations in here because we want to know what we'd like to fund to it for each year. The numbers that we have presented are obviously numbers that have been generated over time. And fourth page, sorry. Sorry. Yes. It should look like this. Okay, so the road, we've got, you know, estimated life remaining of 10 years. We're trying to get to 15 million. We're talking about how we can conduct a reserve study to get a little bit more concrete numbers. The storm drain clean out repair, we show the balance as 220,000, but when we talked earlier, I told you that we had moved some items out of the repairs and maintenance. That was one of them where some of that money has already been spent to do some of the clean out. We've got our fences, which we've talked about, fences 1 through 4 on line items 3 and 4. Word me. The next thing we have is that irrigation and piping. That's the numbers that we have that contribute to any of the major repairs and replacement for irrigation piping, major repairs. Generator, we had changed the number from 17 to 20,000 with a $3,000 difference. That number could change before the next meeting as, I guess, more prices come in. This was the part that we were talking about earlier with Millennium. The three...
What generator are you talking about?
The
Or where?
guardhouse.
Aren't they all installed, the generators?
They
Oh,
just installed.
They just installed the last one you said?
Yeah. Where is it? They installed Haverhill. Oki doesn't have one yet.
Oh, but you had, didn't we have the money this year or?
It's budgeted to move forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's WPRF.
Okay, so this is what we were talking about before about the Millennium Fund and the legal fund. So for the Millennium Fund, we have 375,000 as a balance in that reserve. We have nothing in legal fund because this would be theoretically the first 50,000 that we're contributing. The thought process behind this was if, you know, if time could actually go by without some sort of altercation, we'd be able to build up this fund so we wouldn't have to keep constantly keeping it in the budget, which will help kind of ease congestion in the future years. Next.
What's the Millennium Fund for?
I believe the Millennium Agreement.
So you put $375,000 on it, where's that money going?
It's already in there.
Pardon me?
It's already in there.
What is it for, though? What is it
Attorneys.
for? Oh, attorney, so that's all legal, actually.
Yes, related to the Millennium, because it was contributed to before. This new one that I have below it is, not that it wouldn't be able to be used for that, but just that I thought having a legal fund would probably be a good idea.
So we're putting away $675,000 for legal fund for the Millennium Agreement that we didn't sign.
$375,000 has already been put away, and we'll be putting away $50,000 in 2020.
And I just ask you, have we hired any lawyers that we're aware of? Are we supposed to know what's going on or no?
I don't have the answer to that
Who
because I'm
has
not
the
sure.
answer? Is there a committee? A Millennium Committee? A committee of what? People doing anything?
There is a committee.
Are they doing anything? Is there any meetings, Mr. Israel?
Hasn't been yet.
Yes,
What
sir.
are we gonna wait for till the next agreement expires?
Excuse me.
Yes.
There is, per the vote of the delegate assembly, a committee has been formed.
Do we know who the committee head is, please?
I'm looking maybe for one or two more members. There has been no meetings yet,
Right.
and all legal issues for the moment are being handled by Ron.
We have no other attorney handling?
No.
Is there any, do we intend to get other attorneys to handle the agreement that we're supposedly gonna make?
Necessary.
You think Rod is capable of doing it by
Let's
himself?
try to stick to the budget just for right now because we're running low on time. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, you guys can find that out. Talk later. Yes.
Mr. Lyman used the number of 675,000.
Yeah, he added those two numbers up.
Yes, and that's a good question. 675,000 is a reserve for a maybe. A maybe. Excuse me. We have, what, 2 years to go on the Millennium? You say the money is in a...
Can't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I get up, I need the exercise.
I'm thinking of why we would want $675,000 in a reserve. If I'm not mistaken, one of the principles of accounting is to match revenues with cost. If we had a major legal battle looming or on hand, that's a period cost. That doesn't belong in a reserve. The $375,000 is our estimate of what it would cost us to have a lawyer look over the Millennium Agreement. I think we're way over reserved from an accounting and matching revenue costs. $375,000, if we divide that, let's say by $300 or $350 an hour, I don't know what Mr. Tennyson charges us, that's 1,000 hours. That's way, way over a good estimate. 1,000 hours. We are not writing the Magna Carta. This is not the Senate.
I just want to say
Century
something.
Village.
This is great. Thank you so much for the lesson. I just want to just say something to everyone. You guys operate as a pooled reserve. A pooled reserve, which means if anything happens, based on my understanding, it can be paid for from the reserve. So if every road has an earthquake, we need to pay for it, it comes from that fund. All I merely suggested was that we move the legal fund to the reserve item so it saves us a bottom dollar later down the road, because we still operate as a pooled reserve today, we operate it tomorrow. He is correct. The accounting principle is matching revenue with expenses based on previous expenses. We spent $34,000, or what we estimate $34,000 in 2019. Having something in there probably could be a good idea. You could make the assertion that no, you wouldn't reserve for legal funds. Well, how do you know what your legal expense is going to be? And I don't, $350 an hour, I'm not sure what attorneys I do know that doing anything regarding any legal matter for some reason costs a gazillion dollars because this whole court system screwed up. All I did was take the 50,000 from the P&L and move it there. What would you like?
I would like an analysis. I would like 375,000, which is already in there, to remain there, and I don't think you need another nickel. This is not just building up. We could build up $1 million extra in reserve. It's our job to create a budget that's logical.
I believe that this is logical.
I have a major difference.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well,
I agree.
But you're going against, excuse me, you're going against accounting principles and you just acknowledge it.
I'm not saying that I'm going against the accounting principles. The Millennium Fund is a legal fund as well. All I merely said was, wouldn't it be nice to not have to worry about if something did happen, that we had the money put away if we needed it. However, it's still a pooled reserve. So whether it comes from here or it goes on the other side, it's not that I disagree with you on that point. What I disagree is that it's not a logical number. Especially when we spent, where we expect we're going to spend 35,000 in 2019. There could be conflicts in 2020, 2021. All I'm saying is it'd be nice to have a little money set aside, no special assessments, people don't want their dues to go up $8, $9 a month per unit in 2020.
What we have to go up, we have to go up. But I will say this.
I don't think anyone agrees with that.
Well, they don't have to.
Exactly, and that's why there's 7,000 people that don't want their dues to go up.
You touched on a very salient point. Up until a few years ago, we had a reserve that was allocated. For whatever reason, we came into this pooled reserve. That is not really the way to operate. You may not, and I may not want to have a $10 increase. But what you don't pay today, you're going to pay tomorrow.
Which is why I did that.
Let me finish, okay? You're entitled to your opinion, I'm entitled to mine. I think it's way over budget.
Thank you, sir.
Please try to wrap this up, Sebastian.
Yes, beautification fund, that was the 30,000 I moved. That way they don't have to rush. If they'd like to build up a fund and spend it over a multi-year process, they can. It's only slated for 1 year and 1 year only. I haven't heard any differences from the beautification committee. Copy machine, we had 24,000 in the budget. We took that out. I put 20,000 on this side. I put 1 year estimated life. Whether it lasts 2 months or 10 years has yet to be seen. At over 1 million copies have been made, I believe. We definitely have outlived this machine, and the longer we go and not having to do another contract will save us quite a bit of money in the future. Computer and telephone equipment, where I have a total balance of 60,000 with a 3-year useful life. That number is not so much arbitrary. The data I used was 1 server, 1 phone. So 1 server, 1 phone system, 15,000 and 5,000 equals 20,000. We have it if something breaks. I reduced it on the other side, and the emergency and hurricane cleanup left the same. And then this number matches the sheet 1 at the bottom of page 3. Page 3? Yes. Okay. Okay, so next, got it, and then the next meeting, okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Absolutely. On both sides of this.
Yes.
Did everyone sign in?